Picture a handful of desert tribes who managed to redraw the map from the Atlantic to Central Asia. How did it happen, and what did it mean for the people already living there? Welcome back to the Human History Project. In this video, we're going to take a look at how the Middle East and North Africa came to have an Arab identity. When the Prophet of Islam, Muhammad, died in 632 CE, his followers controlled only the Arabian Peninsula. Yet, within 120 years, they held Egypt, Syria, Iraq, Iran, and all of North Africa. Historians like Fred Donner and Hugh Kennedy call this burst the early Islamic conquests. Some modern scholars see it as an early form of colonialism because new rulers, language, and taxes replaced older Byzantine and Sasanian systems. Long before the first Arab detachments trotted north, the Middle East and North Africa were a patchwork of cultures beneath two tired superpowers. Byzantium ruled Egypt, the Levant, and coastal North Africa from Constantinople. Greek was the language of governors, but village tax receipts still flickered between Greek and local tongues like Coptic in Egypt and Syriac in Syria. To the east, the Sasanian Persians governed Mesopotamia and Iran with a slick bureaucracy and Zoroastrian fire temples at its core. Everywhere, diversity was the norm. Coptic Christians and Hellenized urbanites along the Nile, Aramaic-speaking Christians, Jews, and Samaritans across the Levant and Iraq, Berber and Amazighs, farmers and pastoralists in the Maghreb, many already Christian for several centuries. On the eve of conquest, Egypt's population had probably slipped below 3 million. Plagues and war had taken their toll, while Syriac chronicles suggest Christians still formed a majority west of the Euphrates. Most crucially, a generation-long Byzantine-Sasanian war had drained both treasuries and weakened both empires. When Arab forces appeared, the old empires were grand but hollow. Primary chronicles like Futūḥ al-Buldan, Book of the Conquest of Lands, tells us the stories of generals who both negotiated and fought. When 4,000 horsemen rode into Pelusium, Egypt, they drafted a treaty promising lower taxes than the Byzantines had taken. Al-Balādhurī records the local reply, "If this be true, write it and seal it, and Egypt is yours." Further west, negotiations were not as smooth. From 647 to 698, Arab armies clashed with Berber queen Al-Qaina before capturing Carthage. So how were millions of Christians, Jews, and Zoroastrians folded into the new order? A 7th century document known as the Pact of Umar laid out the terms. Communities that paid the jizya tax could keep their faith, property, and courts, but no new churches or synagogues to be built or renovated, no bells to be rung, and strictly no evangelizing, among many other restrictions on non-Muslim communities. Though scholars debate its exact date, versions survive in medieval Arabic and Greek manuscripts. But conquest did not erase local cultures overnight. In Egypt, Coptic and Greek remained on tax receipts for decades. New cities like Basra, Kufa, and Fustat were melting pots. Markets rang with Latin, Aramaic, Berber, and Arabic. By the early 8th century, however, bilingual papyri started to fade, and Arabic became the language of bureaucracy. Historian Hugh Kennedy calls this administrative Arabization, the quiet partner to military conquest. So was this really colonialism? Classical colonialism usually involves a metropolitan core exploiting distant peripheries. In the 7th century Arab case, the core itself was still forming, and tens of thousands of new converts joined the armies and administration. Fred Donner argues that the movement began as a broad believers' coalition, only later solidifying as an Arab Islamic identity. Yet, for conquered peoples paying new religion-based taxes and being treated as second-class citizens, the experience surely looked colonial. Outsiders in charge, local elites displaced. The debate reminds students to ask who is writing history and when. From algebra to Andalusian architecture, the age of Arab expansion reshaped 3 continents. Whether we tag it conquest, empire, or colonialism, this story led to the emergence of a new era for the region and a new widespread Arab identity based on language and no longer exclusive to Arab ethnicity. But behind this, multiple indigenous communities still live in the region today, carrying centuries of history from one generation to the next. Like history itself, the conversation isn't over. Tell us in the comments, how do you define colonialism? Power, culture, or something else entirely? And don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell for notifications. See you in the next one.